It is the hour when Manhattan seems to hold its breath. Outside, streets are still shiny from an earlier rain, and the traffic lights change for almost no one. A delivery truck rolls through the empty green, then disappears. A subway grumbles under the pavement like a distant thundercloud, gentle and far away. In a high building where the windows are dark and the doors are heavy, someone is already awake. Not because the day is busy. Because the night has its own responsibilities. There are places in a city that work best when you cannot hear them. Water pipes behind walls. Elevator cables inside shafts. Server rooms under clean floors. And money too, in its quiet way, prefers to move like plumbing. You can imagine it, if you like, as a system of calm pipes. A wide main line with steady pressure. Smaller branches that feed neighborhoods and stores. Valves that open and close on time. Meters that listen for changes. A pump that hums, not loud, just present, making sure the flow stays smooth. Tonight, the pump is not a machine with spinning blades. It is a set of rules. A set of routines. A set of rooms where people sit with warm coffee and soft screen light watching numbers glide. The name on the outside of the building does not have to be spoken out loud. You already know the idea of it. The Federal Reserve. The overnight plumbing of money. If you have ever swiped a card at a quiet corner store and walked away with a bag of groceries, you have felt the surface of the system. If you have ever watched a paycheck arrive, not instantly, but reliably, you have witnessed the system's patience. Because money does not move as quickly as you think. Not all the way. Some parts move in seconds. Other parts gather, settle, and confirm, like a tide that waits for the right hour. Tonight, in the middle hours, when most people sleep, the tide is moving. A door opens with a soft pneumatic sigh. A badge taps. A small green light glows. And inside, the mood is controlled seriousness. Not dramatic. Not secretive in a loud way. Just careful. A calm voice says hello to a guard. A second calm voice replies. Shoes cross polished stone. The hum of fluorescent lights is steady, like a long-held note. Somewhere in the building, a clock changes its minute, and a small sound is heard only in the mind. Tick. Another tick. Another. In a quiet office, a person hangs a coat, sets down a bag, and lines up a few objects in a tidy row. A notebook. A pen. A thermos. A key card. A small ritual that says, without saying, I am here. I will watch the flow. I will keep it smooth. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the system itself. Like water in a pipe at night. Moving because it must. Moving because everyone depends on it. Moving gently, without splash. And if you do not listen carefully, that is fine too. The system is designed for you to sleep. Tonight, we will walk through it slowly. We will look at the pipes, and the valves, and the calm dashboard lights. We will do it in a way that feels like touring a museum after closing time. No crowds. No rush. Just the soft echo of footsteps. And the steady work of invisible trillions. For now, let us begin where the night shift begins. With the city dim. With the building quiet. With the plumbing awake. Before we step deeper inside, it helps to name what this plumbing is for. Money, in the modern world, is not a pile of paper bills that slides from hand to hand. Paper exists, yes, and we will visit it later, because paper has its own cozy rituals. But most money is a set of promises written as numbers. A number in your bank account is a promise your bank makes to you. A number in your bank's account is a promise recorded somewhere else. And at the center, like a calm reservoir, there are accounts that belong not to people, but to banks themselves. Those central accounts are called reserve balances. Think of them as water levels in a set of tanks. When two banks need to settle something between them, they do not meet in a parking lot with duffel bags. They adjust the water levels in their tanks. A little out of one. A little into another. No splash. Just a quiet change in a number. The Federal Reserve runs many things, and people argue about many things. But one of its most practical roles, on the ground, is this: to keep the tank system steady, and the pipe system clear, so payments can settle, and trust can stay intact. Trust is what keeps the pipes from freezing. Long ago, before the pipes were standardized, there were panics. There were days when people lined up outside banks like wind around a corner, because trust had turned thin. When trust thins, everyone rushes. And rushing makes everything worse. The Fed was built in part as a machine of calm. A lender of last resort, yes. A backstop, yes. But also a set of procedures, so the country could have something like water pressure, steady enough that you do not think about it. In the present, you can feel the plumbing in small moments. A card swipe at a bakery. A tap of a phone in a subway station. A rent payment that leaves on the 1st and arrives on the 2nd. A paycheck that appears on Friday as expected, as if a hidden conveyor belt ran under your life. All of those moments ride on different pipes. Some are private pipes. Some are public pipes. Some are thick pipes for big transfers. Some are wide pipes that move many small drops at once. And the overnight hours are when the pipe crews do their quiet work. Monitoring flows, balancing pressure, checking for leaks, and making sure every valve is ready for the next day. In this story, we will follow one person through those hours. We will call her Mira. Mira is not famous. Mira is not dramatic. Mira is a worker in a stability machine. A person who likes checklists, soft light, and the steady feeling of a job done carefully. She has a coat that smells faintly of rain and clean wool. She has a lanyard that clicks softly. She has a habit of writing little boxes on a notepad, then filling them in with a slow pen stroke. Tonight, Mira takes the early train into Manhattan. She walks through the quiet blocks. She passes the closed shops. She watches steam rise from a street grate, and thinks, with a small smile, that the city is full of systems that breathe. Soon she will be inside. Soon she will sit down. Soon she will look at the screens where the plumbing is drawn in numbers. And while she watches, you can rest. Because the work is repetitive. Because the work is gentle. Because the work is designed so that, in your home, you can sleep. And nothing has to rattle. Let us go with her now. Not quickly. Just steadily. Like water. Mira's alarm does not ring loudly. It is more like a suggestion. A soft tone. A vibration that says, it is time but it is not urgent. The room is dim blue with city night. She sits up slowly, lets her feet find the floor and listens. No voices. No music. Only the distant hush that means the world is still mostly asleep. In the kitchen, she fills a kettle and turns on the flame. A small sound, a small glow, a small rising warmth. Coffee is, for her, part of the ritual. Not as a jolt. More as a companion. She measures the grounds. She watches the water thread down through them. She breathes in the smell, which is earthy and calm. Then she pours it into a thermos that clicks shut with a quiet certainty. On the table she lays out what she needs. A badge. A notebook. A pen that writes smoothly. A small card with emergency numbers, not because she expects an emergency, but because the system is built on being prepared. She checks the weather without thinking too hard about it. She chooses the heavier coat. She adds a scarf, soft and plain. When she steps outside, the air is cool and clean. The streetlights pool on wet pavement. Her footsteps make the smallest sound, and then the sound is gone. At the station, the platform is not empty, but it is gentle. A few people spaced apart, each in their own quiet bubble. A man with a newspaper folded like a pillow. A woman with a tote bag and tired eyes. A couple standing close, not speaking. The train arrives with a breath of air and a metallic sigh. Doors open. People step in. Doors close. Mira finds a seat and sits with her bag on her knees. The windows are dark mirrors, reflecting sleepy faces. The lights inside the car are fluorescent and flat, the kind that makes everything feel like a waiting room. She likes it. It matches the mood of her work. As the train moves, the city slides by in pieces. A lit staircase. A silent storefront. A bridge beam. A wall painted with old layers of color. She watches without forcing any meaning. The rhythm is enough. At one stop, a small group of workers gets on. Hard hats hanging from backpacks. Boots heavy. They nod to each other, but their nods are slow, not hurried. People who understand that systems do not like haste. Mira thinks of the Fed in the same way. Not an idea to argue about. Not a headline. A system. A set of pipes that must keep pressure. A set of ledgers that must stay balanced. A set of deadlines that arrive whether anyone is awake or not. The train dips underground. The sound changes. Everything becomes more enclosed. And in that enclosure, Mira's thoughts settle. She thinks of the tasks ahead, but not as stress. More like a list of small stones laid in a line. She will pick each one up and place it down again, in the correct spot. The train rises. Then it slows. Then it stops. Midtown. She steps onto the platform. She walks up the stairs. She emerges into a canyon of tall buildings, their windows mostly dark. The air smells like rain, steel, and distant baking bread. A bus passes with a low groan. A taxi glides through an empty intersection. The city is awake, but only a little. Mira pulls her scarf tighter and begins her walk. She likes the way her path is familiar. She knows which corners are windy. She knows which block has the warmest light. She knows where the street grates breathe. In a few minutes, she will reach the heavy doors. In a few minutes, she will show her badge. She will pass through metal detectors. She will enter the quiet hallways. And the plumbing will be waiting, patient and steady. She walks. Her footsteps are small. But they are part of the machine. The building does not advertise itself with bright signs. It stands with a kind of careful privacy, not because it is mysterious, but because it is serious. The stone feels cooler than the air. The doors are tall. The entrance is lit in a way that suggests permanence. Not dramatic spotlights, just a steady glow. Inside the lobby, the temperature changes. Air-conditioned calm replaces street air. A quiet security desk sits beneath soft lighting. Mira approaches with her badge ready, like a key. The first guard recognizes her, or perhaps recognizes her posture. The way she moves, like someone who belongs. "Morning," he says. "Morning," she replies. Her voice is low. Not sleepy exactly, but gentle. She places her bag on a belt. She walks through the metal detector. There is a faint beep, and then a nod, and then she retrieves her things. Everything is polite. Everything is routine. Routine is part of the safety. In the elevator, she rides up with 2 other employees. No one speaks much. A quiet nod. A small smile. The doors close. The elevator hums. When the doors open, the hallway is empty. The carpet muffles footsteps. The air has that clean, slightly dry smell of well-maintained buildings. Somewhere behind a wall, a fan turns. Somewhere behind another wall, a machine clicks softly. Mira swipes into another door. A small green light. A click. A quiet invitation. Her office is not large. It does not need to be. A desk, a chair, 2 monitors, a third screen for a dashboard. A lamp, with a warm bulb, because she dislikes the pure white overhead light. A few plants that somehow survive on careful watering and low attention. She hangs her coat. Then she does the first ritual of the shift. She opens her notebook. She writes the date. She draws a line. She writes a short list of checks. The list is not secret. It is not glamorous. It is the kind of list that keeps systems from wobbling. Check overnight messages. Confirm operational status. Reviews settlement windows. Scan alerts. Confirm liquidity tools on standby. Each item is a small square beside it. She will fill each square. Mira turns on her screens. The glow arrives in stages. One screen wakes, then another. A login page. A security prompt. A second prompt. Then the dashboards appear. At first, to an outsider, it would look like any office. Grids, timestamps, charts. But Mira sees it as a map of pipes. Here is a flow line, steady. Here is another, thicker. Here are pulses, like small waves. Here are points where flows join and separate. Here is a valve, metaphorically a switch in a schedule. She sips coffee. She watches the first numbers of the night, already moving, already settling into patterns. There is comfort in patterns. When the system is calm, the charts look almost boring. Boring is good. Boring means the pipes are clear. Boring means no one is calling in panic. In her inbox there is a message from the previous shift. A simple note. No drama. A small status update. A handoff like passing a baton in a relay, quiet and smooth. Mira reads it. She nods to herself. Then she writes a checkmark in her notebook. Slowly, as if drawing a small door closed. Outside her office, a hallway light flickers once, then steadies. The building continues its gentle hum. The city outside is beginning to brighten. But inside, it is still night. And that is exactly when the overnight plumbing is at its most interesting. Because the day's payments are not just beginning. Some of them are finishing. Some of them are settling into place. Like water that has been traveling all evening. Finding its level. Mira's work begins the same way every night. Not with a sudden burst of action, but with a slow, methodical scan. She opens a system status page. Green indicators. Green indicators. Green indicators. A line of green is soothing. A gentle reassurance. She checks a calendar of settlement windows. Some things settle in real time. Some things settle in batches. Some things settle on schedules so predictable that people build their lives around them, without ever learning the schedule's name. She checks for any notifications. There are always a few. A system update completed. A maintenance window closed. A reminder that a particular report will be generated at a certain hour. Most of these are as ordinary as the hum of a refrigerator. They matter because they are steady. She takes a moment to adjust her desk. The lamp is angled to the left. Her notebook is centered. Her thermos sits on a coaster that has a small scratch, like a tiny riverbed. Her pen is placed above the notebook, parallel to the desk edge. It is not superstition. It is comfort. Order on a small scale that mirrors the order she watches on a larger scale. In another part of the building, in another quiet room, a team is watching different pipes. A separate set of flows. A separate set of dashboards. The plumbing is not one pipe. It is a city of pipes. And the Federal Reserve System is not one building. It is a network of reserve banks, connected by procedures and communications. Like neighborhoods, linked by roads. Tonight, Mira's focus is on the overnight heartbeat of the New York Fed's operations. Not everything, but enough. Enough to feel the weight of it and also the calm of it. She is not moving cash. Not yet. She is not making policy decisions. Not at all. She is keeping watch. There is a word for this kind of work that sounds more dramatic than it feels. Operations. Operations is not explosions. Operations is timing. Operations is making sure the right thing happens at the right moment, and then documenting it. It is like keeping a ship steady. Not by steering wildly, but by making small corrections before anyone notices. Mira opens a report. It is a list of numbers arranged in a way that is almost beautiful. Columns. Rows. Totals. Subtotals. She scrolls slowly. Her eyes are trained to notice what is not normal. A number that is too large. A gap that should not exist. A timestamp that is off by a few minutes. Tonight, everything is normal. She breathes out, and she does not even realize she was holding her breath. She fills in another square on her list. In the quiet, she hears another sound, the building's ventilation. A soft, constant whoosh. A gentle reminder that air, like money, must circulate. She takes another sip of coffee, and the warmth settles in her chest. At her desk, there is a small laminated diagram. It is not a secret diagram. It is a simple picture of a flow. An arrow from one box to another. A third box. A set of lines that represent the system at a high level. Some people keep photos at their desks. Mira keeps a flow diagram. She likes reminders that large things can be simplified. That even complicated systems are made of basic moves. In, out, settle, confirm. She looks at the diagram for a moment, then looks back at the screen. Outside, a siren passes and fades. Inside, the hum remains. There is a phone on her desk, but it rarely rings loudly. If it rings, it is usually another calm voice on the other end. A bank operations person confirming a detail. A colleague asking a question. A scheduled check-in. Mira knows all the voices in her circle. They speak in the language of systems, clear, short, exact. Tonight, she expects at least one call. A routine call. A confirmation that a window has closed properly. She waits. Not anxiously. Just patiently. In the meantime, she begins to tell herself the story of the plumbing. The way she might explain it to a friend, if a friend asked. Not with jargon. With images. A tank. A pipe. A valve. A pressure gauge. Reserves. Settlement. Clearing. Liquidity. Words that, when softened, become almost lullabies. She smiles at that thought. Then she returns to her list. Check. Confirm. Initial. Save. The machine of calm continues. The next ritual is the overnight read. Mira calls it that in her mind, like a bedtime story in reverse. Instead of reading to fall asleep, she reads to keep the rest of the world asleep. She opens a live view of a high-value payment system. Here, the numbers move differently. They arrive in large, clean blocks. A transfer. A confirmation. A settlement. If the everyday payment systems are like rainfall, these are like river locks, opening and closing. Each transfer has a sender and a receiver, not as names she can share, but as identifiers and institutions. Each has a time. Each has a status. Most settle quickly. Real time, one by one. This is the kind of rail used when someone needs certainty. A corporate payroll run to a bank. A large financial transaction. A government movement. A purchase of securities. The kinds of things that do not want to wait for a batch process. Mira watches a handful of transfers appear and disappear from the pending list. She does not need to touch them. She is watching the flow. There is a comfort in watching something that works. Then she opens a different view for a different rail. This one looks less like river locks, and more like a train schedule. Batches. Files. Cycles. A system that gathers many small payments, then processes them together. It is slower, by design. Not because the system is lazy, but because the system is economical. Why move each raindrop separately, when you can move a whole cloud? In the quiet of her office, Mira imagines those batches like sacks of mail. Sorted and stacked, ready for the next truck. And she remembers, briefly, that the Federal Reserve once ran literal mail-based check clearing, in the age of paper checks and envelopes. In those days, money moved at the speed of trains. Now it moves at the speed of network links. But the idea is similar: gather, route, confirm. Mira clicks through the screens with careful patience. A status page for scheduled maintenance. A page for queue depth. A page for any alerts. No red. No flashing warnings. Only small notes, like a whisper, that a normal process has completed. She marks another square in her notebook. At a certain hour, a report will arrive automatically. She knows its timing well. She sets a reminder anyway because reminders are gentle. Her phone buzzes. A message, not a call. A colleague in another room. All green on our side, night is quiet. Mira replies with a single word, good. She feels a wave of gratitude for quiet nights. Quiet nights are when you remember what the system is supposed to feel like. A steady background. A thing you never have to fear. She takes a moment to stretch her shoulders. She rolls her neck slowly. She stares at the city through a small slice of window. The sky is not fully black anymore. It is turning the color of steel. The buildings reflect a faint pale light, like the city is being gently washed. Soon, the day will begin to place demands on the plumbing. Morning payrolls. Morning trades. Morning payments. But right now, in this in-between hour, the system is finishing the night. Mira returns her gaze to the screens. She thinks of the people sleeping in the city. Families in apartments. Students in dorm rooms. Nurses resting after shifts. Drivers napping before dawn routes. Most of them do not know what the overnight plumbing looks like. They do not need to know. Their sleep is a sign that the machine is doing its work. Mira's job is not to be celebrated. Her job is to be unnoticed. And on a quiet night like this, being unnoticed feels like success. She flips to a fresh page in her notebook. She writes a new header. History. Because she likes to remember why the machine exists. And because, in the middle of the night, history feels softer, like a story told with low light. She begins to write. Not for anyone else. Just for herself. A few lines about bank panics. A few lines about trust. A few lines about why people built a machine of calm. Then she puts the pen down and the pen makes a quiet tap on the desk. A tiny sound. A small punctuation in the overnight hours. And the plumbing continues, steady as breath. In Mira's notebook, the word panic looks strange. It is a hard word. A word with sharp corners. A word that does not match the soft hum of her office. But the machine she watches was built after hard moments. So she lets herself think about them, gently. A bank panic, in the simplest terms, is a crowd at a door. Not a crowd that intends harm. A crowd that wants reassurance. A crowd that needs to see, in their own hands, that the promise is real. If you have ever watched a line form suddenly, even for something small, like a new pastry at a cafe, you know how quickly the human mind follows other humans. Now imagine the line is for safety. Imagine the line is for your life savings. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States had repeated moments like this. Banks were smaller. Rules were inconsistent. Communication was slower. And when fear spread, it spread like fire in dry grass. One bank would fail. People would rush to another. That bank, even if healthy, would be forced to sell assets quickly to raise cash. Selling quickly can mean selling cheaply. Selling cheaply can make a healthy bank become sick. A loop. A feedback cycle. A bad vibration in a system. Engineers know this feeling. A resonance you did not intend. A structure that begins to shake. The solution, in engineering, is often damping. A backstop. A controlled pathway for energy to go somewhere safe. In finance, one of the backstops is a lender of last resort. A place that can provide liquidity when the crowd demands it. So the bank does not have to sell good assets at bad prices. Another backstop is standardization. Rules that are known in advance. Procedures that do not change with rumor. The Federal Reserve, created in 1913, was meant to be part of that damping system. Not perfect. Nothing is perfect. But built with the idea that panic is not just emotion. It is a system failure mode. Mira writes in her notebook, panic is what happens when trust evaporates faster than cash can appear. Then she draws a little pipe next to the sentence. And she draws a valve. It makes her smile, because it turns a hard word into a picture. On the screen in front of her, a chart shows an overnight interest rate. It is steady. It does not spike. It does not dive. It moves within a calm range, like a tide. That steady line is, in some sense, the opposite of panic. The rate itself is not the whole story, but it is a useful gauge. It tells you how much it costs, overnight, for banks to borrow from each other. In a world of pipes, it is like pressure. If pressure drops too low or rises too high, something is off. If pressure stays steady, the plumbing is balanced. Mira thinks about the phrase rules of calm. She likes it. She imagines a set of rules printed on thick paper, laminated, placed on a wall. Not as a command but as reassurance. When this happens, do this. When that happens, do that. Do not improvise under stress. Follow the path. A policy meeting is one kind of rule. An operational procedure is another. Both are part of a machine that tries to keep human fear from becoming a mechanical failure. In her office, the lighting is soft now. The overhead fluorescents are dimmed. Her desk lamp is warm. She feels the quiet in her body. The calm of repetition. She looks at the screens again. The pipes are flowing. The valves are open and closed on schedule. The tank levels shift in small, controlled ways. Outside, the city is still mostly asleep. Inside, the machine is awake. Mira remembers one story from history. In 1907, a financial panic spread through New York. Banks and trusts faced runs. The system wobbled. At the time, the country did not have a central bank like it would later. A private banker, J.P. Morgan, gathered people in a library and coordinated support. It worked, in that moment, but it was not a system. It was improvisation. After repeated crises, lawmakers and economists said, "We should not have to improvise every time. We should build a machine." Mira likes that idea. Not because she wants everything controlled, but because she wants everything predictable in the moments when predictability saves lives. She writes another line. The Fed is a library built to avoid the next emergency meeting. Then she closes the notebook. She does not need to think about panic all night. The point of remembering it is to appreciate the calm. She takes a sip of coffee. The cup is warm. The night continues. And the system, designed to damp the shakes, keeps humming, steady and quiet. A gentle chime sounds from one of Mira's screens. Not an alarm. A reminder. A scheduled check-in has arrived. She opens the message. It is short. It says that a maintenance task on one rail has completed as expected. No issues. No delays. Mira marks a square. There is a special satisfaction in marking squares. It is proof that time has passed and work has been done. A simple physical gesture that says yes, the world is still in order. Sometimes, Mira thinks, the difference between a calm system and a panicked system is the difference between a checklist and a crowd. A checklist is one person saying, "I will go step by step." A crowd is many people saying, "I must go now." The Fed in her mind is a checklist made into an institution. Not to remove human choice, but to make sure human choice has something stable to stand on. She leans back in her chair and lets her eyes rest for a moment. The glow of the screens is gentle. The air feels cool. Her shoulders loosen. In the quiet, she can hear a distant elevator moving somewhere. A soft mechanical sound. A reminder that other people are in the building. Each in their own quiet room, each watching their own part of the system. Mira thinks about trust again, but in a softer way. Trust is not just a feeling. Trust is a schedule. Trust is a set of routines that produce predictable outcomes. When your paycheck arrives on Friday, you trust the system. When your rent payment posts, you trust the system. When you tap your phone and the subway gate opens, you trust the system. You do not trust because you have studied the plumbing. You trust because it has worked, again and again, quietly. Mira takes her pen and draws a small diagram in her notebook. She draws two boxes, Bank A and Bank B. Between them she draws a line, and in the middle she draws a third box, the Fed. Then she draws arrows. Not fancy arrows. Just simple lines. From A to the Fed. From the Fed to B. She writes a word above the middle box, settlement. Settlement is a gentle word. It suggests a place where things come to rest. A settlement at the edge of a river. A settlement at the end of a long journey. In finance, settlement is when the promise becomes final. It is when the money truly moves, not just in someone's mind but in the ledger that counts. Mira thinks of it like a handshake with witnesses. Not a dramatic handshake. A quiet one. She knows that many people confuse settlement with the moment they see on their phone. When you swipe a card you see approval. That approval is like a nod. A bank saying yes, we will honor this. But the actual movement of funds, the final accounting, can come later. That gap between nod and settlement is not deception. It is design. It is the way the system handles millions of tiny transactions efficiently. Mira likes to explain it with a story. Imagine a restaurant. You eat. You sign a receipt. You walk out. You feel done. But behind the scenes, the restaurant closes out its register at night. It batches receipts. It sends totals. The bank processes them. The networks reconcile them. Finally, the money settles. It is like checking out of a hotel. You hand in the keycard. You feel finished. But later, the hotel runs the final bill and posts it. The world moves on trust and delayed paperwork. Mira watches the pipes in her screens, and she feels a quiet pride. This is not magic. This is work. This is routine. This is a stability machine built after failures. And tonight, it is humming. She closes her notebook again. She looks at the city outside. The sky is brighter now. A pale ribbon on the horizon. The day is coming, slowly, like a curtain lifting. But inside, the night shift continues, steady as breath. Mira turns back to the screens. She prepares to dive deeper into the pipes. Because the next thing to understand, in the plumbing of money, is the reservoir itself. Reserves. The quiet water level that keeps everything else from running dry. Reserves are, in the simplest sense, balances. Numbers that sit in accounts. But the location of those accounts matters. A bank can hold many assets. Loans. Treasuries. Cash in vaults. Deposits at other banks. But when banks need to settle with each other, there is one place that matters more than the rest. Their account, at the Federal Reserve. Think of it as the central reservoir. Not because it holds all water, but because it is the place where the water levels are measured consistently. When Bank A pays Bank B, the final settlement can be recorded as a decrease in Bank A's reserve balance and an increase in Bank B's. A calm subtraction. A calm addition. This matters because, at the end of the day, everyone agrees the reservoir is real. Everyone agrees the Fed's ledger is the ledger of record for those balances. Mira opens a page on her dashboard that shows aggregate reserve balances. It is not labeled with names. It is a general view, like looking at a city's water usage chart, without knowing which apartment took which shower. She watches the line move slightly. Not dramatic. Just a slow drift. The drift has reasons. Paychecks. Tax payments. Securities settlements. Treasury operations. 1,000 small currents. In the plumbing metaphor, reserves are the water in the pipes, and the overnight interest rate is the cost of borrowing that water. If one bank is short on reserves at the end of a day, it might borrow from another bank that has extra. That borrowing is often overnight, just until morning. A small bridge over a small gap. The interest rate for that borrowing is like a fee for using someone else's water pressure. Not because the water is scarce in a literal sense, but because balance is needed, and balance has a price. Mira's job is not to set that price. But she watches it, because it tells her how the system feels. A calm system has a calm price. She thinks of reserves again, and she remembers how confusing the word can be. People hear reserve and imagine a hidden pile of money. A vault of secrets. But reserves are not a secret pile. They are an accounting category. A number on a ledger. And yet, because accounting is quiet, it can feel mysterious. Mira likes to make it less mysterious. She imagines a small town. 2 grocery stores. They both accept a local paper coupon system. Every evening they bring their receipts to the town hall. The town hall adjusts each store's balance in a ledger, so everyone agrees who owes whom. The town hall does not have to move a suitcase of coupons. It just changes the ledger. That ledger, in the modern economy, is the Fed settlement system. Of course, the modern system is larger than a town. It is vast. But the logic is simple. Mira scrolls through a section of her screen that shows the day's settlement windows. Some payments are real-time gross settlement. That means they settle one by one immediately. No netting. No bundling. Each payment is final when it happens. Other payments are deferred net settlement. That means they are collected, and then the net totals settle later. It is like adding up all the receipts and settling the difference. Both methods are useful. Real-time settlement is like a direct pipe. Net settlement is like a reservoir that collects water and releases it in measured pours. Mira looks at a small chart that shows activity. It rises and falls, like breathing. The most interesting part to her is not the size of the numbers. It is the rhythm. The rhythm is predictable. Predictability is calm. She writes in her notebook. Reserves are the quiet water level beneath the visible river. She draws a little wave under the sentence. And she smiles again, because drawing waves makes everything softer. On another screen, a message appears. A scheduled note. Overnight batch window begins in 20 minutes. Mira nods. She adjusts her coffee. She straightens her pen. The night has a schedule. The plumbing has timing. And in 20 minutes, another set of pipes will open, moving many small drops at once. She watches the clock. Tick. Tick. Then, like a valve opening, the next phase begins. The batch window arrives quietly. Nothing dramatic happens. A graph shifts. A queue counterchanges. A status line updates. Mira watches the numbers like a person watching snow fall outside a window. You do not control the snow. You simply observe. You notice patterns. You enjoy the calm. A batch process, in payments, is like gathering letters. During the day, people write letters. They slip them into mailboxes. They feel done. But the letters do not move immediately. They wait together in a bag. Then a truck comes. Then a sorting center. Then another truck. Then another sorting center. Then, finally, delivery. The ACH system is like that. Automated clearinghouse. A name that sounds sterile, but the idea is cozy. A clearinghouse where many small obligations are sorted and settled. Payroll. Rent. Utilities. Membership fees. All those small repeats of life. Mira watches a file count increase. Then she watches it decrease. A cycle. In this moment she can picture the country as a landscape of small payments. People asleep while their pay stubs are being reconciled. People dreaming while their rent is being posted. People turning in bed while a file moves from one institution to another, safely. The system does not need people to be awake. It needs the system itself to be awake. That is why Mira is here. She checks for any anomalies. A delayed file. A queue stuck. An error code. Nothing. Everything flows. She places a checkmark beside overnight batch window in her notebook. The ink is dark. The gesture is slow. Then she switches to another page. This one is not about the batches. This one is about finality. A bank might have reserves. It might have a strong balance. but the timing of its outgoing payments can still matter. Just as a household can have enough money overall but still need to time bills, so the checking account does not dip too low on a certain day. Liquidity is not just how much you have. Liquidity is when you have it. That is why systems include tools: intraday credit, overnight lending, collateral arrangements, backstops. Mira looks at a screen that summarizes which tools are available. Not in detail. Just a simple status. Available. 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 A quiet reassurance that, if something unexpected happens, the system has a way to respond without panic. She thinks again of engineering. If you build a pump system, you include redundancy. A second pump, ready. A pressure release valve, ready. A sensor that detects heat, ready. You hope never to use them, but their presence changes the system's mood. It is easier to be calm when you know there is a backup. In finance, the tools are different, but the logic is similar. Mira takes a slow breath. She realizes she enjoys this work. Not because it is exciting, because it is like tending a garden at night, checking moisture, removing a small weed, making sure the irrigation timer is correct. Simple, steady, and deeply important. Her phone rings. A calm ring, not loud, not sharp. She answers. Operations, she says. On the other end is another calm voice. A bank operations manager. They exchange a few confirmations. A time. A reference number. A status. The call is short. No jokes. No tension. Just clarity. When she hangs up, Mira writes one line in her notebook. Confirmed overnight batch status with counterparty. All normal. Then she draws a small square and fills it in. Outside, morning is arriving. Inside, the pipes continue. And now, having seen the reservoir and the batch trains, it is time to look at the moment people think is instant. The card swipe. The tap. The little beep at a store that feels like magic. We will slow that moment down gently, until you can hear the tiny clicks behind it. Not loud clicks. Just the quiet clicks of systems doing what they do. In a grocery store, a card reader makes a cheerful sound. A beep. A chime. A small light. To the shopper, that sound means done. But in the plumbing of money, that sound means begin. Mira likes this distinction. She likes the way the world is full of begins disguised as ends. A card payment has stages, like breathing. First, there is authorization. Authorization is the moment the system asks, is this card valid, and is there enough balance or credit to approve this purchase? It happens quickly. In seconds. Your bank, or your card issuer, replies with a yes or a no, a nod or a shake. That nod is not the full movement of money. It is a promise to move money later. Think of it like reserving a seat at a theater. The theater says, yes, you may sit there. But you have not yet watched the show. The evening is not yet complete. After authorization comes clearing. Clearing is where the details are gathered. The merchant collects the day's card receipts. The merchant's bank collects them. A network sorts them. Totals are matched. Fees are calculated. Everything is prepared for settlement. Clearing can happen in batches, often at the end of a business day. And then comes settlement. Settlement is the final movement, the part that lands in the ledger that counts. The part that changes balances in a way that cannot be undone without a new transaction. Settlement is where the plumbing meets the reservoir. Now, not every card settlement runs through the Federal Reserve directly. There are private networks, private clearing arrangements, private rails. But the broader system still rests on central settlement accounts. At some point, large institutions must settle with each other using central bank money, or using arrangements that are backed by it. Mira thinks of it like this. Private pipes can carry water between buildings, but the city's water pressure still comes from the municipal reservoir. The reservoir sets the baseline reality. She opens a training document on her computer. A simple explanation she once wrote for a new colleague. It uses plain language. It avoids jargon. Mira likes plain language. She reads it slowly, as if reading herself to sleep. Authorization, a quick nod. Clearing, gathering the receipts. Settlement, moving the final balances. She imagines a bakery at the corner of a quiet street. During the day, the bakery sells pastries. Customers tap phones. The screen says, approved. The baker smiles. Life moves on. At night, after the bakery closes, the merchant system sends a batch. The receipts are grouped. The bakery's bank receives totals. The network matches them. And somewhere in the background, balances shift. The baker is asleep. The customers are asleep. The system is awake. This is the overnight plumbing. Mira looks at a line on a dashboard that shows volume. Not individual transactions. Just a pulse of activity. In the night hours there is still movement. Not the frantic movement of daytime shopping, but the careful movement of settlement. She thinks about the phrase card swipe isn't instant, and she tries to soften it. It is not that the system is slow. It is that the system is layered. Layers make systems resilient. If everything were instant and final in one step, errors would be harder to catch. Fraud would be harder to stop. Disputes would be harder to resolve. The system uses time as a buffer. Time is one of the quiet tools of stability. Mira writes in her notebook, time is a gasket in the plumbing. A gasket prevents leaks. A gasket absorbs vibration. A small piece of material that makes a big system behave. She likes that. She sits back, and she lets her eyes relax. In her mind, she sees a diagram. At the far left, the shopper. At the far right, the merchant. Between them, banks, networks, processors, clearinghouses, settlement systems. It is a long hallway of quiet rooms. Each room does one small task. And the hallway ends at a door marked final. Mira returns to her screens. She watches the system do its work. And she thinks, with a gentle satisfaction, that most people do not need to know any of this. They only need the beep. Tonight, the beep has already happened. Now the quiet rooms are finishing the job. Slowly. Carefully. Like a night watch. There is another kind of, not instant, that Mira likes to explain. It is the difference between available balance and posted transaction. You see it in your bank app sometimes. A purchase appears as pending. Then, later, it posts. That is not just the bank being slow. That is the bank reflecting the layered process. Pending means the bank has set aside the amount. It has honored the promise. But the final clearing and settlement are still moving through the pipes. Posted means the pipe has reached its endpoint. The ledger has been updated. The water level has changed for good. Mira watches a small list of statuses. Pending. Settled. 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 It is like watching droplets become a stream, then disappear into the ground. Sometimes, she thinks, the modern economy is a series of invisible rivers. You stand on a bridge, you feel the vibration of traffic, you do not see the water. But the water is there, moving. Mira receives another message from the previous shift's notes. A small addendum. Keep an eye on morning batch volumes, expected to be slightly higher. She nods. She sets a soft reminder. Higher volume is not inherently dangerous. It is simply a change. Her job is to notice changes and make sure the system remains calm under them. She returns to the map of pipes. So far we have looked at reserves, at batch clearing, and at card processors. Now there are two rails that feel more directly like central plumbing. One is the big pipe. Fedwire. One is the wide pipe. ACH. Mira calls them big and wide because it is easier to remember than the official words. Big pipe moves large transfers, one by one, with immediate finality. Wide pipe moves many smaller transfers, gathered and settled in cycles. Both matter. Both are boring when they work. Mira likes boring. She opens the Fedwire view again. Transfers appear, settle, disappear. A steady trickle of very large values. She imagines them as ships passing in a dark channel, navigation lights steady. Then she opens the ACH view. File counts. Cycles. Batch statuses. She imagines that as freight trains, long and slow, carrying the ordinary life of the nation. She is careful not to romanticize too much. After all, these are just systems. But there is something comforting in knowing that ordinary life has infrastructure. That your rent does not float through the air. It goes through pipes that are watched, maintained, and logged. Mira adjusts her chair. She feels the time. It is later now. The night has moved forward. Her coffee is cooler. The city outside is brighter. She takes a moment to reheat her mug with the last warm sip from the thermos. Then she sits again. On her notebook she writes a new header. Fedwire and ACH. She draws 2 lines, one thick, one wide. And she smiles, because drawing lines is easier than worrying. We will take each rail gently. We will follow one example at a time. We will keep our pace slow, like a steady walk down a quiet corridor. No rush. Only flow. Fedwire, in Mira's mind, is a door that closes firmly. When a payment settles on Fedwire, it is final. It is like moving a heavy box from one shelf to another and locking the cabinet. No waiting. No later reconciliation. The move itself is the proof. This is why it is used for high-value and time-critical payments. It is designed to be sure. In a typical day, banks and other institutions send and receive Fedwire payments to settle large obligations, a securities purchase, a corporate transaction, a financial institution balancing positions, a movement that needs certainty now, not later. Mira watches the line of activity. It is not constant. It comes in pulses. Some hours are busy. Some are quiet. At night, it becomes a gentle stream. The wide pipe, ACH, is different. ACH is not about immediate finality. It is about efficient movement. Imagine you are moving a library. If you move each book individually, one by one, you will make many trips. If you box the books, label the boxes, and move the boxes on a schedule, you will move the same library, with fewer trips. ACH is the boxing system. A company runs payroll. Instead of sending a separate high-value real-time payment for each employee, it prepares a file with many entries. Those entries are sorted, routed, and processed in batch cycles. The same happens with bills and subscriptions, electric utilities, water payments, gym memberships, mortgage payments. All these small pieces of modern life flow through the wide pipe. Mira thinks of the wide pipe as a river delta. Many streams join. They move together. Then they branch out again to reach their destinations. The timing is predictable, even if it is not instant. People plan around it. Banks plan around it. The system itself plans around it. In her office, Mira pulls up a schedule of the day's cycles. It is like a train timetable. Cycle 1. Cycle 2. Cycle 3. Each has a window. Each has a processing period. Each has a settlement time. It is not the kind of timetable you see on a wall in a station. But it might as well be. Mira runs her finger along the screen, tracing the hours, as if tracing the route of a train. The first morning cycles are always significant. That is when payroll and bill payments often settle. She checks the note again, slightly higher volumes expected. She sees the early numbers beginning to rise. She does not feel alarm. She feels the gentle pressure of attention. Higher volume means more boxes. More boxes means more processing. The system is built for it. But the system must still be watched. Mira thinks about another concept: netting. In some systems, instead of moving the full gross amount of every transaction, the system calculates net obligations. If Bank A owes Bank B 10 million, and Bank B owes Bank A 9 million, the net is 1 million. Netting is like two people carrying boxes in opposite directions, then deciding to exchange one box in the middle, instead of making two trips. It reduces movement. It reduces effort. It reduces the need for liquidity at the exact moment. ACH uses netting principles in its processing. Fedwire does not. Fedwire is gross. One payment, one settlement. Both styles have purpose. Gross gives certainty and reduces certain kinds of risk. Net gives efficiency and reduces liquidity needs. Mirror-like systems that balance trade-offs. No system is perfect, but a thoughtful system makes its trade-offs explicit. She writes in her notebook, big pipe, final, one by one. Wide pipe, efficient, batched. Then she adds, both are calm when scheduled. She sits back and listens to the building. The ventilation hum is steady. A distant copier, somewhere, makes a soft whir. An elevator dings quietly in the distance. Outside, the morning sun reflects off glass buildings. But inside, the quiet rooms continue their night rhythm. Mira glances at the clock. Soon, another part of the plumbing will become central. Not the movement of payments, but the adjustment of pressure itself. Because even if the pipes are clear, pressure must be managed. And that is where open market operations enter the story, like a careful hand on a valve. Before we go to the valve, there is one more gentle piece of the pipe story. Settlement, in the end, is about final accounts. If a bank participates in these systems, it needs to have enough balance, or enough access to balance, at the right time. This is why collateral matters. Collateral is an old idea. A pledge. A promise backed by something solid. In the plumbing metaphor, collateral is like having a water tower. If the city's main reservoir has a problem, the water tower can provide pressure for a while. In finance, collateral is often high-quality securities, like government bonds. They are used as assurance. If an institution needs intraday credit, it can pledge collateral. It can borrow against that collateral. Then it can settle its obligations. At night, Mira's job is not to manage collateral directly, but she can see the outlines of it in the systems. A note that certain credit channels are available. A summary that certain collateral pools are sufficient. These are gentle words. Available. Sufficient. They are words that help people sleep. Mira watches a small status indicator for a credit facility. Green. She watches another. Green. It is like checking the pressure relief valves in a mechanical system. You want them ready. You hope they never open. She thinks again about the difference between the public view of money and the operational view. Public view, money is what you have. Operational view, money is what settles. Settling is the grown-up part. Settling is where promises become actual changes in balances that everyone agrees on. That agreement is the heart of the system. Mira's screens show no names. But she knows the scale. She knows that behind these quiet numbers are institutions that hold people's savings, companies, payrolls, and the stability of markets. It could feel heavy, but in the quiet of her office it feels more like gravity. Constant. Reliable. A force you respect, not fear. Her phone buzzes again. Another routine message. A colleague confirming that a morning maintenance step is underway. A simple, FYI. No urgency. Mira replies with a thumbs-up emoji, the closest thing to casual she allows herself at this hour. Then she turns to the next section of her notebook. Open market operations. She writes it as if writing the title of a children's book. Because, in a way, it is. Open market operations is the chapter where a central bank adjusts the system's pressure. In the simplest version, the Fed buys or sells securities. When the Fed buys securities from the market, it pays by crediting reserve balances. That adds reserves to the system. It is like adding water to the reservoir. When the Fed sells securities, it takes reserves out. It is like draining some water. This is not done for drama. It is done to keep the overall system aligned with the policy goals set by the central bank. Mira does not decide those goals. But she sees the mechanism. She sees the way the valve is operated. Not by a physical wrench, but by transactions in markets. She imagines a technician turning a wheel slowly. Not yanking. Not forcing. Just adjusting. A little more pressure. A little less. She closes her notebook gently. The next part of the night is where the plumbing feels most literal. Because the Fed's plumbing is not just metaphor. It is also a set of tools used to keep overnight rates in a calm range. And those tools live, in many ways, at the New York Fed. Mira's building. Mira's quiet rooms. The valve is waiting. And we will approach it slowly. With our voices low. Like walking into a room where someone is sleeping. Because the goal is not noise. The goal is steady flow. If you have ever adjusted the water temperature in a shower, you know how delicate a valve can be. A small turn changes the feel. A small turn changes comfort. Too much, too fast, and the system shocks you. The open market trading desk in Mira's mind is like that valve. The desk is part of the New York Fed's markets group. And its job is to implement monetary policy in the markets. To help keep short-term interest rates within a desired range. That sounds grand. But the feel of it is quiet. It is a team of people with screens and schedules. It is a set of auctions and operations. It is a daily rhythm. Mira does not sit on the desk. Her role is adjacent. But she watches some of the same indicators. Because the valve affects the entire plumbing system. In modern times, the Fed often operates in what people call an ample reserves environment. That phrase can sound abstract. Mira imagines it like a reservoir that is full enough that the city does not fear running dry. In that environment, the Fed uses administered rates and facilities to help guide overnight rates. One of those is the interest paid on reserve balances. If the Fed pays banks interest on the reserves they hold, that sets a kind of floor for how cheaply banks are willing to lend those reserves out. Another tool is a reverse repurchase facility, a place where money can park overnight in exchange for a security, earning a set rate. These tools are like soft boundaries. They make sure the water pressure stays in a comfortable range. Mira likes soft boundaries. Hard boundaries can cause banging in pipes. Soft boundaries are dampers. On her screen, she sees an upcoming operation. A routine auction. A schedule. The numbers are not important for this story. The rhythm is. The desk announces an operation. Eligible counterparties participate. The operation settles. Reserves shift. Rates respond, gently, like water finding level. The simplicity of the explanation hides the complexity of execution. But Mira does not need the complexity to appreciate the calm. She thinks of it like tending a thermostat. You do not need to know the physics of the HVAC system to set a comfortable temperature. You need to know the desired range. You need to know the controls. The Fed's policy committee sets the desired range for a key rate. The desk uses tools to keep the market's overnight rates aligned. The result, ideally, is that the cost of overnight money does not surprise anyone. Surprises create stress. Stress creates panic. Panic creates runs. So the valve is turned slowly. Mira watches the day's early data appear. She sees a measure of overnight rates. It is within range. Calm. She sees another indicator. Also calm. She writes in her notebook. The desk is a hand on the valve. Slow turns, steady pressure. She pauses. Then she adds, not to control everything, to prevent sudden swings. It is important to remember, she thinks, that the economy is not a bathtub. It is not a single container with one faucet. It is a landscape of flows. But certain flows are central. And the overnight cost of money is one of them. Because it touches the financing of banks, which touches the credit they provide, which touches the rhythm of commerce. Mira hears a faint murmur in the hallway. Colleagues passing. A soft laugh. Then silence again. The building, like the system, has its own rhythms. On her screen, the scheduled operation moves from planned to in progress. Mira watches without tension. There is something oddly soothing about watching a large system do a small, scheduled thing. It is like watching a train arrive on time. It is like hearing a clock strike the hour. The operation completes. A status changes. A note appears. Completed. Mira fills another square in her notebook. Check. Confirm. Document. Outside, the city is now clearly morning. But inside, the calm continues. There is still more plumbing to see. And the next chapter is about the price of overnight money itself. The rate that serves as a kind of pressure gauge. We will look at it as if it were a simple dial on a panel, and we will listen to its calm movements, like listening to a slow, steady heartbeat. The open market tools can sound like a different language at first. Repo. Reverse repo. Treasury bills. Collateral. Auction. But Mira likes to translate them into everyday images. A repurchase agreement, a repo, is like a pawn shop transaction for one night. You bring something valuable, like a security. You receive cash. You promise to buy the security back the next day at a slightly higher price. That difference is the interest. In the plumbing metaphor, repo is a way to add water pressure temporarily. A reverse repo is the mirror image. The Fed offers a place for cash to rest overnight, taking cash in and providing a security as collateral, then reversing the trade the next day. This can help set a floor under rates, because it offers an alternative. If you cannot lend money at a reasonable rate, you can park it here. Mira does not need to remember every detail at all times. She only needs to remember the purpose. Purpose is calming. Purpose keeps you from getting lost in terms. The purpose is to keep overnight rates behaving like well-tuned pressure. Mira thinks about the overnight part. Overnight is a special time in money markets. It is a boundary between days. It is where books close. It is where positions roll. It is where small mismatches are bridged. If a bank ends a day with a little less than it wants, it can borrow overnight. If it ends with a little more, it can lend. The market for these short loans is active and quiet. The interest rate is the price of that quiet bridge. And the Fed, by setting certain administered rates and conducting operations, helps shape the environment in which those bridges are built. Mira watches a summary of the day's early overnight activity. It is clean. No surprises. She feels a small satisfaction. Not pride, exactly. More like relief that the system is still behaving. There is a human part to this. People built the system. People operate it. People make decisions about it. But at night, in the quiet, the system feels like a natural thing. Like a river. Like weather. Like a tide. Mira knows that is an illusion. But it is a useful feeling. It helps her stay calm. Her phone buzzes with another short message. A colleague on the desk side. Operation settled. All good. Mira replies, logged. She makes a note. In her notebook, the page is beginning to fill with check marks. The check marks look like small birds, resting. She thinks again of the viewer, of you. Somewhere in bed, perhaps listening. If you are listening, you do not need to remember all these tools. You only need to feel the rhythm. A schedule. A check. A confirmation. The overnight plumbing is not dramatic. It is rhythmic. Mira stands and walks to a small kitchen area on the floor. She refills her water bottle. The water runs with a soft hiss. The sound is oddly comforting. She returns to her desk. As she sits, she hears the building's quiet hum again. Ventilation. Distant printers. Soft footfalls. She looks at the clock. The night is moving toward morning. Soon the day shift will begin to arrive. Soon, the building will have more voices. But for now, Mira still has time to move through one more gentle explanation. The rate itself. The pressure gauge. The little number that so many larger numbers lean on. We will look at it the way we look at a thermometer. Not with fear. With curiosity. With calm. Because in a calm system, even the important gauges move gently. Imagine a panel on a wall. On the panel are dials. One dial shows temperature. One dial shows pressure. One dial shows flow rate. You do not stare at the dials all day, but you glance at them often. Because if a dial moves too far too fast, it might mean the system needs attention. In Mira's world, one dial is the overnight rate. Different rates exist, different measures and names. But the idea is consistent. How much does it cost, overnight, to borrow money? In the banking system, money is not just something you possess. It is something you borrow and lend constantly. Like oxygen. Like water. Like air in the lungs of commerce. Banks borrow to manage daily flows. They lend to each other. They lend to customers. They borrow against securities. They borrow against collateral. Overnight lending is the smallest unit of that. A bridge from one day to the next. The price of that bridge matters. If the price jumps unexpectedly, it can signal stress. A clog. A leak. A sudden shortage of liquidity. If the price stays steady, it signals calm. Mira's screens show the rate. It is within its intended range. A smooth line. She looks at it the way a nurse looks at a stable heartbeat monitor. A quiet reassurance. In modern policy, the Fed sets a target range for a key overnight rate. It does this through decisions made by the policy committee. Then, operationally, the system uses tools to keep market rates within that range. Interest on reserve balances. Overnight reverse repos. Market operations when needed. All of this can sound like a debate. But in the night shift view, it looks like a machine being tuned. Mira thinks about the word target. A target is not a guarantee. It is a goal. It is a desired zone. Like setting a thermostat. You set 70 degrees. The system does not hold 70 at every moment. But it keeps you near it. It makes the home comfortable. A target range is a comfort zone. Mira watches the overnight rates and sees them staying in the comfort zone. She writes, pressure is calm. Then she adds a second line. Calm pressure makes quiet payments possible. She thinks of a city's water system. If water pressure fluctuates wildly, showers go cold and hot, pipes bang, sprinklers sputter. If water pressure stays steady, nobody thinks about water pressure. The same is true for the price of overnight money. When it is steady, nobody thinks about it. And that is the point. Mira knows that the Fed's mission includes more than plumbing. Employment, inflation, broader economic goals. These are big and human and debated. But in this story, tonight, we are in the quiet rooms, where the plumbing part is most visible. We are watching the dial. We are watching the steady line that lets other people forget the dial exists. Mira remembers that, in moments of crisis, the dial can move violently. And when it does, people notice. Headlines appear. Voices rise. But when the dial is steady, the system is doing its quiet job. She feels a gratitude again, for boring. A message appears. Morning volume within expected range. Mira nods. She can see the day beginning in the numbers. More activity. More flows. More pulses. The city is waking, and with it, the pipe network is busier. But the overnight work has done its job. The system is balanced as morning begins. Mira takes a breath. She looks at her checklist. Many squares are filled. There is one more tool we have not visited closely. The one that lives in the memory of panics. The lender of last resort. The discount window. The place that exists so that, in a moment of need, Banks can borrow without shame, without drama. And the crowd does not have to form at the door. We will walk toward that tool gently, as if walking toward a fire extinguisher in a hallway, hoping we never use it, comforted that it is there. Before we go to the emergency tools, Mira likes to remember one more simple point. Most of the time, the plumbing is not about saving the day. It is about preventing a bad day from forming. Prevention is quiet. Prevention does not make noise. It makes routine. Mira's job is filled with quiet prevention. She checks that a system is up. She checks that a queue is moving. She checks that a rate is within range. She checks that a report arrives on time. She checks because checks are the opposite of panic. On her screen, she opens a page that shows administered rates. Administered rates are rates set directly by the central bank, not purely by market trades. They act like rails. If the Fed says we will pay this rate on reserves, then banks have a baseline. They know they can earn that rate by simply holding reserves. If the Fed offers a reverse repo facility at a certain rate, then institutions know they can park cash at that rate, secured by collateral. These administered rates help anchor the overnight market. Anchors are calming. An anchor keeps a boat from drifting. Mira thinks about boats again. She likes water metaphors. Perhaps because water is the most familiar infrastructure, and money is the most invisible. The more she can make money feel like water, the less mysterious it feels. She looks at the administered rates, then at the market rates. They are aligned. They are behaving. She writes in her notebook. Anchors hold, so the tide does not surprise anyone. Outside, the sky is fully morning now. But the sunlight is still soft, filtered by clouds. The buildings shine gently. In the hallway, she hears more footsteps. A few more voices. The day's shift is beginning to arrive. Mira is not leaving yet. There are still checks to complete. And there is always a careful handoff to make. But she feels the night's work nearing completion. She can sense it in her body the way you sense the end of a long song. A last verse. A last chorus. A quiet fade. Her phone rings again, a scheduled call. This time it is a colleague in a different department. They discuss one small item, a planned adjustment to a report timing. Nothing urgent. Just coordination. Coordination is another calming word. It suggests people working together without drama. When the call ends, Mira writes a note. Then she looks at the last major chapter in her notebook. Discount window. Lender of last resort. She underlines it softly. The discount window is not a literal window. It is an access point. A facility. A place banks can borrow from the central bank, typically against collateral, when they need liquidity. In the stories of panics, this tool matters. Because it can provide cash when cash is scarce. And in providing it, it can prevent fear from spreading. Mira knows that, in healthy times, the discount window is used lightly. It is a backstop. A readiness tool. But its presence shapes behavior. It tells banks and markets. There is a place to go. There is a way to avoid the crowd. In the plumbing metaphor, it is the backup pump. You hope you never need the backup pump. But you sleep better knowing it is connected. Mira takes a slow breath. She closes her eyes for a moment. When she opens them, she turns the next page. We will enter the hallway where the backup pump is kept. We will not hear any alarms. We will only feel the comfort of preparedness. Because the machine of calm is built not just of everyday flows, but of quiet readiness for the rare day when flows become rough. And even then, the goal is the same. No panic. Only steady pressure. There is a particular kind of calm that comes from redundancy. When you board an aeroplane, you do not think about redundancy, but it surrounds you. Multiple engines, multiple systems, checklists, procedures. You do not feel it as fear. You feel it as the ability to relax. Mira thinks the discount window serves a similar emotional purpose in the financial system. On most nights, nothing dramatic happens. But if an institution faces an unexpected need for liquidity, the discount window can provide a path that does not require selling assets in a rush, and does not require forming a crowd at a door. It is a path designed for dignity. Borrowing from the central bank can carry a stigma in some contexts, because markets can interpret it as weakness. But in an ideal stability machine, tools are used without shame. They exist to keep the system stable. Mira likes to imagine a hallway with a cabinet. Inside the cabinet is a fire extinguisher. You do not want to use it, but its presence changes the building. Because if there is smoke, you can act quickly. You can prevent a small issue from becoming a large one. The discount window is that cabinet. In practical terms, the process involves collateral and terms and approvals. A bank pledges collateral. The Fed lends, under defined rules. The bank repays. It is not meant to be a profit center. It is meant to be a stabilizer. Mira does not run these loans. But she sees the status of readiness. She sees that systems are available. She sees that monitoring is in place. She opens a dashboard page that summarizes the facility's operational status. Green. There is a list of contacts on the page. A chain of escalation. A set of phone numbers and roles. Mira reads them without anxiety. She reads them like reading a map of emergency exits in a hotel. Not because she expects a fire, but because knowing the exits makes the room feel safer. She takes a sip of water. She hears the faint clink of the bottle on her desk. Outside, the city is fully awake now. Cars move. People walk. Coffee shops open. But inside, there is still a sense of night, because the work is still quiet. Mira thinks about how financial crises feel to outsiders. To outsiders, crises are headlines. To insiders, crises are workflows. Phone calls. Transfers. Collateral checks. Liquidity assessments. A lot of crisis response is simply operations under stress. And the best way to handle stress is to have rehearsed. So the system practices readiness. The discount window is part of that readiness. Mira writes in her notebook, backstop tools are rehearsed calm. Then she thinks of another crisis tool, the idea of central bank lending to markets. Other facilities that can be created in emergencies. But she does not linger there, because tonight is not an emergency. Tonight is normal. Tonight is quiet. She returns to her main tasks. She checks that scheduled reports have run. She checks that no alerts have appeared. She checks that the early morning payment windows have opened and closed properly. Everything is normal. She fills another square. There is a small satisfaction in seeing a page of filled squares. It is a picture of stability. A picture of a night that did not wobble. Now there is one last side of the plumbing we have not visited. And it is the most physical, the most cozy. Cash. Real paper bills. Stacks. Straps. Counting machines. Vaults. The part of the Fed that smells faintly of ink and cotton fiber. The part that still feels like old money stories. But in a modern, procedural way. Mira stands. She gathers her badge. She leaves her office and walks toward another part of the building, where the air is cooler and the doors are heavier. We will go with her. Slowly. Like a quiet tour. Because even in a digital world, the overnight plumbing still includes paper, moving gently through the night. The hallway to the cash operations area is different. The doors are thicker. The corridors feel more controlled. There is an extra layer of security, an extra layer of quiet. Mira signs in at a checkpoint. A guard nods. She shows her badge. She passes through another door. The air feels cooler here, as if the building keeps this part of itself like a cellar. The lighting is steady and practical. Nothing decorative. Nothing warm. But the quiet has its own warmth. In a viewing area, behind glass, she can see part of the cash operations floor. Workers in plain uniforms move in slow, efficient patterns. Not rushed. Not casual. Procedural. There are tables. There are machines. There are bins. There are stacks of paper bundled in straps. This is money in its physical form, and it looks, in a way, like laundry. Clean bundles. Sorted piles. Worn notes separated from crisp ones. Mira watches with a kind of gentle fascination, because here, the plumbing metaphor changes. Here, money is not water. It is fabric. US currency is made of a cotton-linen blend. It has texture. It has a smell. It ages. Bills come in from banks. From ATMs. From stores. From armored carriers. They are processed. They are checked for authenticity. They are sorted. Some are deemed fit to recirculate. Some are unfit and will be destroyed. Fit and unfit are soft words. They make the process feel like caretaking. A bill that is torn, too dirty, too worn becomes unfit. It is retired. A new bill will replace it. Mira watches a machine pull bills through at high speed. The bills blur. But the machine's sensors are precise. They look for counterfeits. They look for tears. They look for soil. They look for the subtle signatures of ink and paper that indicate legitimacy. The sound is not loud. More like a steady hiss and flutter. The workers are calm. They move stacks from one place to another. They place straps around bundles. They label them with non-readable codes from this distance. They stack bundles into neat columns. There is something soothing about neat columns. Mira thinks about how many hands touch a bill in its life. A cashier. A bus driver. A bartender. A grandmother. A child buying candy. Then, eventually, the bill returns to a bank. From the bank it returns here. From here it either returns to circulation or is destroyed. A cycle. In the viewing area, Mira can see a large, heavy door. A vault door. It looks like something from an old movie but without drama. Just engineered weight. Behind that door, there is more currency than most people will ever imagine. Not as treasure. As inventory. As supply. The Fed supplies currency and coin to the banking system. Banks distribute it to the public, through ATMs and teller windows. The Fed takes used currency back and processes it. It is a logistics operation. Armored trucks. Schedules. Vault inventory counts. Quality control. The overnight plumbing includes trucks, and straps and pallets. Mira breathes in and she notices, faintly, a smell. Paper and clean air, maybe with a trace of machine oil. She likes it. It is the smell of physical procedure. Behind her, a guard's radio murmurs quietly. A soft voice, too low to understand. It blends with the steady machine sounds. Mira watches a worker lift a stack of bills and tap it on a table to align the edges. Tap. Tap. A tiny ritual of neatness. She feels the same satisfaction she feels when she aligns her pen with her notebook. Order on every scale. Mira stays for a few minutes, then turns back. Her job is still at the desk. The plumbing is still moving. But she carries the image of the cash floor with her, because it reminds her that even the most abstract systems are made of real things. Paper. Machines. People. Schedules. And all of it, when done well, is quiet. She walks back through the hallway. She passes through the thick door. She returns to the softer carpet and the office hum. And she feels, in her body, that her shift is nearing its end. There is still one last task. The handoff. The gentle transfer of responsibility to the next shift. So the machine never stops. Even as people come and go. We will follow her to that handoff. And then we will follow her home. Into the normal life that begins after invisible trillions have moved. Because even plumbers of money, after their work, go home and sleep. Back at her desk, Mira opens the morning reports. They arrive like clockwork. A series of files, automatically generated, summarizing the night's activity. Report 1, System Status. Report 2, Settlement Volumes. Report 3, Exception Logs. Mira reads each slowly. Not because she expects bad news, but because reading is part of the ritual. The reports are like a pilot's pre-flight checklist. Most days, everything is fine. But you still check. In one report, she sees a note about cash shipments scheduled for the week. It reminds her of the physical side of money. Cash operations have their own rhythm. Banks order currency. They forecast demand. ATMs require replenishment. Retail businesses need change. During holidays, demand rises. During certain events, patterns shift. The Fed's cash services coordinate all of this. It is not one vault in one city. It is a network. Regional reserve banks. Branches. Armored carriers. A flow of paper and coin that mirrors the flow of digital payments. Only slower, heavier, and more tactile. Mira imagines a pallet of currency. Strapped bundles stacked in neat bricks. Plastic wrap tight around the stack. A label on the outside. The pallet moves on a forklift. It loads into an armored truck. The truck drives through city streets while commuters drink coffee. And no one in the traffic jam thinks, there is the physical supply of money passing beside me. It is just a truck. That is the magic of good infrastructure. It looks ordinary. In the cash floor she visited, there were also mutilated notes. Notes damaged by fire, flood, and accidents. Those notes can be submitted through processes, evaluated, and replaced, if enough of the note remains to verify. This is another quiet service of the system. Restoring trust in paper, even when paper is fragile. Mira likes that the system makes room for fragility. She thinks of coins. Coins are heavy, dense little facts. They clink. They accumulate in jars. They get lost in couch cushions. Coins move through their own logistics. Bags. Boxes. Rolling machines. Distribution to banks. Return to the Fed. Mira once visited a coin processing area and watched a machine sort coins by size. The sound was like rain on a tin roof. A steady clatter, oddly soothing. She writes in her notebook, "Cash is the tactile side of trust." Then she draws a small stack of rectangles to represent bills, and a small circle to represent a coin. She checks her watch. Time. The day shift has fully arrived now. The hallway outside has more voices, still subdued but present. Mira prepares for handoff. She opens a shared log. She writes a summary. Not emotional. Not long. Just facts. Overnight operations normal. Batch windows completed. No significant alerts. Morning volumes within expected range. One scheduled maintenance item completed. No further action required. She reads the summary twice. Then she posts it. She sends a message to the next person in her role. A colleague named Devon. Quiet night, all normal, key notes in log. Devon replies quickly. Got it, thanks. Mira feels a small release in her shoulders. The machine will continue. It does not depend on her alone. That is one of the comforts of working inside infrastructure. You are important. But you are not alone. Mira begins to tidy her desk. She closes files. She logs out of systems. She makes sure her notes are stored properly. Then she does the last ritual. She reviews her notebook page. So many check marks. So many filled squares. She smiles, almost imperceptibly. It is time to go. She puts on her coat. She picks up her thermos. She checks that she has her badge. Then she steps into the hallway. And she joins the quiet flow of people leaving a building that most will never think about. A building where the overnight plumbing of money runs. So the city can wake without fear. Outside the sun is higher now. The streets are busy. But Mira moves through them with the calm of someone who has already done her day's most delicate work. She heads toward the train. She will go home. And the system will keep humming. Because the plumbing does not stop. It only passes from hand to hand. Shift to shift. Quietly. On the walk to the station, Mira blends into the crowd. Now the sidewalks are full. People carry coffees. People talk. People look at phones. Delivery bikes weave gently through gaps. The city has turned up its volume, but only to a moderate hum. Nothing chaotic. Just daytime. Mira looks at the faces she passes and thinks, for a moment, that each person is a set of payments. Rent. Groceries. Subscriptions. Tickets. Paychecks. 1,000 little obligations, all of them made easier by the invisible pipes. She does not feel superior. She does not feel secretive. She feels connected. She is part of a system that lets other systems function. At a corner, she pauses while a pedestrian signal counts down. The countdown is small, the numbers bright. A reminder that everything is scheduled. Even crossing the street. When the signal changes, she walks. In her mind, the city's infrastructure layers overlap. Subway lines below. Water pipes below those. Fiber optic cables. Electric lines. And, in a more abstract layer, the money plumbing. Moving through data centers and ledgers and settlement accounts. A city is not a place. It is a set of systems stacked together. Mira reaches the station. She swipes in. She descends. The platform is crowded now. A train arrives. Doors open. People step in. Mira finds a standing spot near a pole. She holds on gently. The train moves. As it moves, Mira's tiredness arrives in a wave. Not heavy. Just a soft settling. Like sand at the bottom of a jar. She closes her eyes for a moment. Not to sleep. Just to rest. In her mind, she returns to the vault door. The stacks of bills. The counting machines. The neat straps. She thinks of the paper's journey. A bill leaves the printing facility. It enters a reserve bank vault. It travels by armored carrier to a commercial bank. It travels by ATM to a person's hand. It travels through countless hands. Then it returns worn to be checked and sorted. If it is fit, it continues. If it is unfit, it is destroyed. A cycle that is both mundane and profound. Mira likes cycles. Cycles are reassuring. Cycles mean the world is not stuck. The train slows. It stops. It starts again. Stations pass. Names flash on signs, but Mira does not read them. She watches light and shadow. Eventually she exits. Her neighborhood is quieter than Midtown, even in daytime. Tree shadows on sidewalks. Small storefronts. A dog barking once, then quiet. She walks the last blocks to her building. Inside she climbs the stairs. She unlocks her door. She enters her apartment. The air inside is still. The curtains are drawn. The room is cool. Mira hangs her coat. She places her badge on a hook. She sets her thermos in the sink. Then she does a small home ritual. She makes a simple breakfast, even though it is late morning. Toast. A piece of fruit. Water. She sits at her table and eats slowly. She does not turn on the news. She does not check headlines. Her mind is full enough of systems. After eating, she washes the plate. The water runs. The sound is familiar and gentle. She dries her hands. Then she walks into her bedroom. She pulls back the covers. She slips into bed. She exhales. Outside, the city continues its daytime routines. Inside, Mira returns to sleep. And while she sleeps, the plumbing continues. Not just because she watched it, but because the machine is built to continue without any one person. That is the final comfort. A stable system is not a hero story. It is a relay. A series of quiet handoffs. So the world can keep moving. And so the people inside it can rest. Mira closes her eyes. Her breathing slows. The night is over for her. And the day is beginning for everyone else. The machine hums. The city breathes. And in the background, like water in pipes, money moves gently, as it always does. While you sleep, there is a moment after a shift ends when the mind is still in the system. Mira feels it even as she lies in bed. In her dreams there are charts. Not frightening charts. Simple lines. Steady slopes. A comfort zone. In her dreams there are doors that open with a soft click. There are hallways with muted carpet. There are screens glowing like small aquariums in the dark. She dreams of check marks too. An endless page of little squares, all gently filled. The next shift in the building will continue without her. Devon will sit at the desk. Devon will open the dashboards. Devon will scan the status indicators. Devon will read the reports. A new set of check marks will appear. The machine of calm does not belong to one person. It belongs to a network of people and procedures. Mira likes that thought. It makes the work feel less heavy. In the afternoon she wakes. The daylight in her room is softer now. Her body feels slightly out of phase, like a watch that is set to a different time zone. But she is used to it. She sits up slowly. She drinks water. She opens a window slightly and listens. Outside, neighborhood sounds. A child's laugh. A car door closing. A distant lawnmower. Ordinary life. Mira makes another coffee, smaller this time. She sits by the window and watches the sky. The clouds have moved. A thin band of sunlight slides across building walls. Glass reflects it. The city glows. She thinks of the end of her shift, the part she always likes. Walking out of the building and seeing sunlight after hours of soft interior light. It feels like leaving a theater. You step out and the world is bright. You blink. You remember that the story you were inside was real, but also separate from your personal life. Mira's life is both ordinary and connected to huge numbers. At the grocery store, she pays like everyone else. She checks her phone like everyone else. She watches the bank app show a pending transaction, then a posted one. She knows why the delay exists. But she does not need that knowledge to live. Sometimes, she thinks, knowing how the plumbing works does not change your shower. It only changes your appreciation for the steady water. She finishes her coffee. Later she will go for a walk. She will buy vegetables. She will do laundry. She will be one person in a city of people. And the plumbing will keep moving under her life. In the evening she watches the sunset reflect on glass buildings again. From a different angle, from a different neighborhood. The light turns gold. Then orange. Then soft gray. The sky changes slowly, like a system easing into night. Mira feels her own rhythm shifting again. Her next shift is soon. Her body will return to nighttime wakefulness. Her mind will return to the quiet rooms. She does not dread it. She likes the calm. She likes the repetition. She likes being part of a machine that keeps things steady. As night arrives, she prepares again. A shower. A simple dinner. A quiet room. A dim lamp. She gathers her things for the next shift, placing them in the same order. Badge. Notebook. Pen. Thermos. The ritual repeats. And in repeating, it becomes soothing. Mira lies down again, not to sleep for a full night, but to rest. A nap before she goes back into the city's quiet hours. As she rests, you can rest too. Because the story of the Fed's plumbing is not a story of secrets. It is a story of routine. A story of systems doing their work quietly. A story of people who keep their voices low, because loudness is not useful here. When the system works, it disappears into the background. That disappearance is a gift. A gift of calm that lets you focus on your own life. And then, at night, lets you sleep. In the next and final chapter, we will close the loop gently. We will return to the image of the city at night, and the pipes beneath it. We will say goodnight to the machine. The way you say goodnight to a house that creaks gently, stable and safe. And then we will let the hum fade into the distance. Back at the building, the lights will hum again tonight. The doors will click. The badges will tap. The quiet rooms will fill with soft screen glow. Mira will sit down. Devon will hand off. Another person will take the next shift after that. The machine will continue. The plumbing of money is not one pipe and not one room. It is an entire infrastructure. It includes reserves, the water level beneath everything. It includes rails like Fedwire, the big pipe of final transfers, and ACH, the wide pipe that carries the ordinary life of payments in batches. It includes card networks and clearing processes that take time on purpose, using time as a buffer, a gasket, a stabilizer. It includes open market operations, the careful hand on the valve, turning slowly to keep pressure in a comfortable range. It includes the discount window, the backup pump in the hallway cabinet, ready for the rare day when the system needs extra support. And it includes cash operations, the tactile logistics of paper and coin, counted, sorted, strapped, and circulated with quiet care. All of these pieces together create a feeling most people never name: financial calm. Calm is not the absence of movement. Calm is movement that follows predictable paths. A river is calm not because it is still, but because it flows where the banks guide it. The Fed's plumbing is a set of banks. Rules of calm. Schedules. Procedures. Backstops. Checklists. Tonight, in your home, you might hear your own plumbing. A pipe settling. A radiator ticking. A refrigerator cycling. Small infrastructure sounds that mean the house is alive. The financial infrastructure is similar. It makes small sounds in the form of reports generated, transfers settled, files processed, rates measured. If you are not listening for those sounds, that is good. The best infrastructure is the kind you can forget. But if you are listening tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you can imagine the city in a gentle wide shot. Streetlights, like soft beads. Windows glowing like distant lanterns. Bridges carrying quiet traffic. Subways moving under the ground. And beneath it all, invisible flows. Not just water. Not just electricity. Not just data. Also the quiet movement of balances, settling into place. A tank level rising here. A tank level falling there. A batch file completing. A big transfer settling with a firm click. A valve turned a fraction of a degree. No splash. No panic. Only steady work. Somewhere in a quiet room, Meta draws a check mark. A small square filled. A tiny sign that the world is still in order. And because it is still in order, you can sleep. Let the idea of the plumbing fade now. Let the pipes become background hum. Feel your own breathing. In. Out. In. Out. Like flow in a pipe. Like a steady rate on a calm chart. The city will keep humming. The machine will keep breathing. And you will rest. Good night.